On the stage of international politics, moments arrive that quietly redraw the balance of power, without formal declarations, without open wars, yet with consequences that reverberate across continents. Today, the world is standing at one such moment. The recent posture of the United States has grown unmistakably tougher. Hints of asserting control over the Greenland, the imposition of heavy tariffs on allied nations, and attempts to impose one-sided conditions in the name of ending the Russia-Ukraine war. Together, these moves signal a strategic shift away from diplomacy and toward pressure, leverage, and raw power. And it is within this tense global climate that a leaked video concerning Venezuela has ignited a new wave of debate. This is not just another leaked recording. It is a window into how power is exercised behind closed doors. In the video, Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez claims that, during the operation to detain former President Nicolás Maduro, foreign forces gave cabinet members just 15 minutes to surrender. The alternative, she alleges, was death. The video, nearly 2 hours long, surfaced through a journalist collective known as La Hora de Venezuela. It shows Rodriguez recounting these events during a secret meeting held 7 days after Maduro was removed from power. To understand the weight of these claims, we must step back. Venezuela has long been a battleground, not of armies alone, but of ideology, energy resources, and influence. For more than 2 decades, the country has stood at the center of a geopolitical tug-of-war between Washington and its rivals. Vast oil reserves, strategic location, and ideological defiance turned Venezuela into a symbol of resistance against U.S. dominance in Latin America. That resistance, however, came at a cost: economic sanctions, diplomatic isolation, and internal instability. The operation described by Rodriguez allegedly unfolded during the final hours of Maduro's rule. According to her account, fear was introduced from the very first moment. She claims that she, her brother Jorge Rodriguez, and the interior minister received direct threats of assassination. At one point, she was reportedly informed that Maduro and his wife had already been killed. Whether true or psychological warfare, the intent was clear: break resistance swiftly, decisively, and without negotiation. 15 minutes. In the language of diplomacy, that is not a deadline. It is an ultimatum. Such a narrow window leaves no room for legal process, no space for mediation, and no respect for sovereignty. If these claims are accurate, they suggest an operation designed not merely to remove a leader, but to paralyze an entire state apparatus through fear. Yet the story does not end with Maduro's fall. In the aftermath, Venezuela's new leadership adopted a public tone of defiance toward Washington. Statements condemning U.S. interference echoed across state media. But behind the scenes, a different reality emerged. In practice, the new government began complying with many demands previously issued by the Trump administration. Restrictions were eased, negotiations reopened, and most notably, discussions around U.S. access to Venezuela's oil sector resurfaced. This contradiction, public resistance paired with private compliance, reveals the complexity of modern power politics. President Donald Trump openly praised Delcy Rodriguez, an unusual gesture given Washington's history with Venezuelan officials. He also hinted at renewed American involvement in Venezuela's energy industry, a sector holding the world's largest proven oil reserves. These signals suggest that the removal of Maduro was not solely about democracy or human rights, but about recalibrating control over strategic resources. Who benefits from this shift? For the United States, the answer is multifaceted. Access to Venezuelan oil reduces dependence on volatile Middle Eastern supplies and counters the influence of China and Russia in Latin America. For American energy companies, reopening Venezuela represents billions of dollars in potential revenue. For Washington's strategic planners, it is a reminder that economic pressure, when combined with targeted force, can still reshape regimes. But the costs are equally significant. Venezuela's sovereignty stands deeply questioned. If a sitting government can be coerced under threat of annihilation, what message does that send to smaller states worldwide? It reinforces a dangerous precedent that power, not law, defines legitimacy. For Venezuelan citizens, the price has been paid in years of instability, economic collapse, and uncertainty about who truly governs their nation. Analysts also point to the broader context. While there is no direct evidence linking Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to the Venezuelan operation, some experts interpret the episode as part of a larger U.S.-led global strategy, a strategy that prioritizes decisive action over prolonged diplomacy and results over consensus. From Eastern Europe to Latin America, the pattern appears consistent: apply pressure, exploit fractures, and secure strategic advantages. The leaked video, therefore, serves two purposes. First, it exposes the methods allegedly used to force political change in Venezuela. Second, it raises profound questions about the future of international order. Are we entering an era where ultimatums replace negotiations, where 15-minute deadlines substitute for international law? As the world watches Washington assert itself with increasing confidence, allies and adversaries alike are recalculating their positions. For some, this assertiveness promises stability through strength. For others, it signals the erosion of a rules-based system painstakingly built after World War II. The Venezuelan episode is not an isolated incident. It is a symptom of a broader transformation in global politics, one where power is exercised openly, unapologetically, and often without consensus. And as this transformation unfolds, one question remains unanswered. How long can such a system sustain itself before resistance takes a new, more dangerous form? To grasp the long-term implications of this moment, we must look beyond Venezuela itself and examine the global chessboard. The United States today operates in a world very different from the unipolar moment of the early 2000s. China's economic rise, Russia's military assertiveness, and the growing independence of regional powers have constrained Washington's freedom of action. In response, American strategy appears to be shifting towards speed, pressure, and calculated risk. In this context, Venezuela becomes a test case. If a defiant, resource-rich state can be neutralized through a combination of sanctions, psychological warfare, and selective engagement, then the same model could be applied elsewhere. The message is implicit but powerful. Resistance carries consequences. Cooperation brings rewards. Yet this strategy carries inherent risks. Heavy-handed tactics may deliver short-term gains, but they also breed long-term resentment. In Latin America, memories of U.S. intervention run deep. From Guatemala to Chile, history has taught the region that foreign-backed regime change often leads to decades of instability. Venezuela could follow the same path if internal divisions deepen and legitimacy remains contested. Internationally, the response has been cautious but telling. China and Russia have expressed concern over Venezuela's sovereignty, even as they quietly reassess their investments. European nations, already strained by tariffs and diplomatic pressure from Washington, find themselves caught between alignment and autonomy. The global South, watching closely, sees a pattern that may one day be directed toward them. What if the leaked video triggers broader scrutiny? If international bodies pursue investigations, Washington could face renewed accusations of violating international norms. While the United States has historically weathered such criticism, the cumulative effect could weaken its moral authority, an asset as valuable as military power. There is also the economic dimension. Reopening Venezuela's oil sector under U.S. influence could stabilize global energy markets in the short term. Increased supply may lower prices, easing inflationary pressures worldwide. However, this benefit comes with strategic trade-offs. It could undermine efforts to transition toward renewable energy and lock Venezuela into another cycle of resource dependency. For Venezuela itself, several scenarios lie ahead. In one future, pragmatic cooperation with the United States leads to economic recovery, gradual political normalization, and reintegration into global markets. In another, public disillusionment with perceived foreign control fuels unrest, giving rise to new opposition movements, possibly more radical than those before. A third scenario envisions Venezuela becoming a quiet battleground once again, as rival powers compete for influence behind the scenes. From Washington's perspective, the calculus is cold but clear. In a world of limited patience and rising competition, decisive action is seen as necessary. The Trump administration's approach reflects this belief that strength deters challengers and reshapes realities faster than negotiation ever could. Whether this belief proves correct remains uncertain. History offers mixed lessons. Empires that relied solely on force often overextended themselves. Those that balanced power with legitimacy endured longer. The question facing the United States is not whether it can impose its will, but whether it can sustain the consequences of doing so. The Venezuelan video, leaked and raw, strips away diplomatic language and exposes the mechanics of modern power. It forces the global audience to confront uncomfortable truths, that ideals often yield to interests, and that sovereignty is sometimes negotiable in the face of overwhelming force. As the international system continues to evolve, moments like this will define its character. Will the future be shaped by cooperation or by coercion? By shared rules or by unilateral decisions enforced with 15-minute ultimatums? The answers are not yet clear, but one thing is certain: the choices made today, in Washington, in Caracas, and beyond, will echo far beyond this moment. They will determine whether the world moves toward stability through consent or order through fear. And in that choice lies the true test of global leadership.